Hey, what's up everyone, Mekkah here, and welcome back to the return of Fire Emblem Unit Fuel. And of course, if I'm talking Unit Fuel, I gotta do it with the one and only inventor of Unit Fuel, Professor Bopper. How's it going?
Oh, it's going all right. I'm glad to be back, talking more about feeling or units or whatever we do here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I don't have bronchitis anymore since the last time I was on for PvP, so I'm actually energized today.
Full health, yes. A little hurt by daylight savings, I think.
No, I actually benefited because fall daylight savings in the US gives us an extra hour of sleep,
same here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. That helps in that case. That's good, because we got a lot of units to go through. We won't go through all these at once in one episode. I think last time we had a batch about this big. Took us about 4 videos to get through. If that happens again, I'm completely okay with it. I hope Bopper is too, because we got some stuff to do.
Yeah.
Before we dive into it, I think it'd be good to have a quick, refreshing crash course on Unit Fuel. I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, is just explain what I think it means, and then if I say it wrong, or if you have a slightly different perception, or if anything to add, please add. And then everyone will be back up to speed. So, Unit Fuel basically is how much fun is Unit to use. How does it feel to use the units? It has almost nothing to do with how good a unit actually is. It can have overlaps, like sometimes a really good unit for that reason can be really fun to use. For example, I think we had Raiden Dawn Har last time. Everyone enjoys using Har because he's so powerful, but there are so many other reasons why a unit can be feel good to use, whether it's because they level up a lot, so they get tons of level up dings, which gives you dopamine rushes. Maybe a unit has some kind of weird combo that works really well. Maybe you just like the unit aesthetically a lot. Maybe you like the way they talk to enemy bosses. Maybe you like the way they act as supports. Maybe there's like one time where a unit totally turned out well, even though they shouldn't have. So it's a lot more personal based rather than a lot more objective based. So in that way, it's like the antithesis to a regular tier list, where it's all about subjective unit experience rather than hard statistical evidence. Like, unit can be good or bad, it's personal. This is going to be my version, like how it feels for me, but Bopper's input is more than welcome, of course, because he might have very different experiences. Is there anything I missed right here?
I think that covers it all.
Good.
Pretty simply, Unit Fuel's just how much fun are you having using these characters in typically a casual setting, I should say, as well, although I would imagine if you're somebody that does a lot of like either 0% growth or LTC or different things, this is going to change a lot.
I mean, if Don right now sat down and made one of these, it would be equally valid, right?
Yeah, it would be.
For him, at least. For him, which means... Okay, so we have a lot of submissions. These were, of course, again, submitted by my lovely Patreons, and a lot of people were really enthusiastic about their submissions. I think I counted them, I think it's 50. So we have a lot to go through. I put them in the order of the games that they were submitted in rather than the submission order. So that's why they're looking like that. And we're going to start with FE1 Marth and move on to Brighton, Palla, and Catria, and Azelle, Arthur, the mages, Coirpre from FE4 Gen 2, Lester from Gen 2, Lex from Gen 1, then we have Trude and Macha from Thracia, Macha, Brighton from Thracia, Ronan from Thracia, of course, great submission, 5 stars, 5 out of 5, and then we might get to FE6, so we got Sue, Dorothy, Bors, Milady, Zeus, Faye, and OJ, so a lot of FE6, so we might have to save that one for next time. I wonder why there's so many FE6 submissions. And, I mean, you can see the rest of the portraits, and I'll just announce them next time we get to them. This is probably as far as we're going to get in episode 1, if it's that far. So, FE1 Marth, we can take turns again, going first, if you want. So, FE1 Marth for me, not to use a dumb pun or anything, but double-edged sword, because on one hand, for me, FE1 Marth is, like, one of the fastest ways to dominate FE1, which feels really good to trivialize a game. That's always good, and like he taunts enemies to attacking him all the time because they love trying to go for a game over, so he's expert at baiting enemies, which is funny. But the big drawback to FE1 Marth is that he's in FE1, which is a game that has bad game feel, if you know what I mean. It feels bad to play FE1. Marth is the fastest path through FE1, but for me that generally doesn't mean having a good time. It means that my bad time is shortened. So I don't know, if I'm being tortured and there's something I associate with it being a shorter time of getting tortured, I don't know, that doesn't make it feel good. It just makes it feel less bad, if you know what I mean. So I'm honestly I almost want to put him in bad just because he's in FE1, but because he's the closest thing FE1 has to making it feel good, I'd be inclined to go with medium. What are your thoughts?
So, assuming FE1 as like just a base, like being fair to that game, I think Marth is, hurt by the fact that he has to seize and he has to visit villages. So even though he's very strong, I feel like when I'm using him, he's on rails. Like, okay, he's going in this direction, then he's going here. I don't feel like I get any creativity out of using him because he is so strong that I can send him anywhere, but I'm kind of locked with where I have to send him. And I will obsessively get all the villages every single time. You know, and then when I give him stat boosters and stuff, it feels more like I'm doing it as an obligation to beat the game than because I'm really invested in making Marth really good. I know people love the falchion on him for the 4 or so chapters that he has, but I think he has like Path of Radiance Ike issue where during the like mid game it becomes a big slog because his weapon level growth's actually really bad, so his damage output sucks. He doesn't get Levin Sword or Silver Sword nearly as quickly as other characters.
Really? Oh, wow. I never had issues getting to Silver Sword with him. The Rapier's kind of good, though, I think, right? In that game.
The Rapier is really good, because it is effective against most enemies, but it does kind of limit his options a little bit, doesn't get the good 2 range. I find I've beaten FE1 3 times.
Jeez, why?
And
what is wrong with you?
I never get his weapon level high enough to use those higher swords until really late in the game.
He is
which has always been frustrating to me.
He is base 5, 30% growth. I can see why he wouldn't get to 9 very quickly. That would be 4 procs with the 30% growth. He can definitely miss that. He does only have 19 levels to go through, so I can see that. I just don't remember it being an issue for me. I don't think I gave him an arm scroll. Maybe mine got lucky, and as a result, it didn't impact me very much. Do you think
and that's
that...
when...
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's like the subjective part, I guess, is because in my experience, never getting weapon levels on him.
That's fair. I was going to ask, sometimes there's a village, because you said you compulsively like to get all of them, but sometimes there's a village you really don't care about, but you might have the feeling to get it anyway, and then you get into that bad feeling part where you either go for that village and have a miserable like extra 5 turns in the map where you really don't need to have them, or you have to skip it and you're skipping content, which also feels bad. It reminds me of the 3 Houses Monastery, where it's not really optional because you don't want to miss out on anything, but you also don't feel good doing it. It feels like busy work. Is that the same? Does that impact your feeling on Marth as well?
I think it. I don't want to... Yeah, I'd say it does. The only time where I feel it's really bad is in the chapter where you recruit Palla and Catria, because the village is worthless and way out of the way.
That was the village I was thinking, the Thoron village, I think?
Yeah.
That feels bad. You know what? So, we've said the word bad so much, I feel like I have to put him in bad now. That's where he goes. And I know from experience from these that filling up the bad tier is really difficult, so if I can put a unit there, I will do it.
Yeah. I will say he is good for like the last 4 maps. I'll give him that. Once he gets Falchion, it becomes a stomp, and that's a lot of fun. Yeah,
I think the Falchion gives me good unit debating fuel, because a lot of people say Falchion's really good, and it gives me an opportunity to say the Falchion is overrated, because I think it is. I don't think it's very good, because the way I see it, the Falchion is like, it's like a slightly stronger Silver Sword, and this might be personal because I always get Marth the Silver Sword anyway, so it doesn't need it. But the thing with the Falchion is like, everyone is always hyping like, okay, it negates all attacks, and then it has like a giant asterisk that says it negates non-ranged attacks, so only 1 range, and it doesn't negate Manicheets. But by the time you have the Falchion, you face Manicheets, snipers, and bishops almost exclusively. So I'm like, okay, what's the use of this special property? And then the other thing people cite always is what it does again is like, you use it as an elixir, and they like heal him to full. I'm like, okay, that's great, but I can heal Marth with physics, and if I heal him with an elixir, I'm not going to be able to kill any of those snipers or bishops that were going on counter before. I want to finish those off because they keep attacking me. So I never want to use the player phase healing him. So I feel like the Falchion is bad, but I can see why someone who doesn't get if you don't get the Silver Sword with Marth, that it feels like it adds a lot more, because then you have the extra might that the Falchion provides over like a Steel Sword.
Yeah, to me it always feels like a big jump, but if you're not getting any benefit out of it, I can see where it's just not going to be, it's going to be like, kind of, who cares?
Definitely. Okay, you mentioned Palla and Catria before, and I actually almost forgot that these were Gaiden, Palla and Catria, rather than FE1, which makes them probably pretty better. For me, I mean, Gaiden has the same problem as FE1 for me, where it kind of feels bad, but not as bad for me. I don't know how it is for you. You're supposed to go first, so I'll just let you go from here.
So, it's been a long time since I beat Gaiden all the way through, so I don't have too much specific memory of Palla and Catria. For me, Gaiden, though, is more fun than FE1 because there's no item management, for one thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're having to trade inventories. Like, it exists on the Famicom much better than FE1 does. And with a tighter, smaller cast of characters and the split armies, everyone just feels a little more distinct. And the AI is kind of ridiculous in Gaiden, so it's funny to mess around with, like all their healing AI, which is why I like the flyers, actually, because they can just fly around and cover up heal tiles, bait enemies into like coming in that direction, which is kind of fun. And then enemies have 700 HP in Gaiden, so them getting the Falcon Knight promotion makes dealing with all the dungeons a lot more fun, although I don't know if that's a benefit to them or a criticism of Gaiden and having ridiculous HP.
It's kind of similar to FE1 criticism, right? Where it's like, okay, they make it, they reduce the suffering that you have to go through, but I would debate that Gaiden is much less suffering. In fact, you could argue it's not suffering at all. And in that case, we get into medium good territory, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. For me, whenever I play Gaiden, I have a feeling that I just don't get with FE1. And that's like, it's so amazing that this game exists on the NES. It's so far ahead of its time when you look at it. And a lot of things in it were like just really cool, especially the route split mechanic. And just the Fire Emblem, it still feels like you're playing Fire Emblem. And sure, it's limited by the NES, but it feels less like you're trying to fight the system and more like you're playing a reasonably good game that's just kind of held back by the NES a bit. But way different than that. And then, like you said, Palla and Catria allow you to get around the ridiculous healing AI that always exists, and their bonus damage against monsters is beneficial, if not like great feel. I remember it takes a while for Falcon Knights to promote, but Palla does have a really high base level relatively to everyone else, so you can get a pretty good jump ahead. I've recently kind of come around on Palla, especially, and slightly less on Catria and Echoes. I used to think they were like, you know, S tier, ridiculously good units, and now I'm thinking like they're pretty good. But there are units that can match or surpass their combat abilities, and I think in Gaiden they're probably relatively better off, but still pretty good. But we're still talking Gaiden here, where like there is a point in Gaiden where it stops feeling like fun to play because the maps get a little bit too tedious for me, and they are kind of hurt by that. So my final judgment on them will probably end up being medium, just because there are points where I don't feel like moving them to the next enemy anymore. I just want to take a break and do something else. But that's more Gaiden than them. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. It doesn't feel great to play at that point. Like early on when you get these, super fun. Early all Act 1, super fun. But there's a point where it stops being fun. That kind of hurts them for me. So I would put them there.
The last thing I want to say on them, this is kind of how Gaiden and Echoes intersect in my brain, but there's something special to me about Palla and Catria. Like, I always feel excited to use them, because the first time I played Echoes, I forgot to go back to the village and recruit them. I didn't realize you could do that. So I didn't get them until, like, Act 4. Or 5 or something, like, where I backtracked all the way. For some reason, I don't remember why. And then I was like, whoa, they're recruited? So, like, now whenever I play in like Gaiden or Echoes and I have them when you're supposed to get them, it's always like, ooh. Like, I feel like I'm getting late game characters super early.
Because you are.
Yeah.
For your POV, they're like good characters. Yeah. There's one more quick thing I want to mention. Catria joins with the Angel Ring in Gaiden. I think she does the same in Echoes. And I mean, you can trade items, like you said, like you swap them around in the preps, but especially when you're new to a game, it feels like you should kind of keep the weapons that unit joins with on them for a while, because that's kind of how that's where the devs put them, so there's probably a reason for it. It's probably fine to keep trying it. That's why people use the Killer Bow on Jamka and the Brave Sword on Ira. And that means that Catria gets to introduce you to the Angel Ring mechanics, which is doubling your level ups whenever you get a stat. Like if you level up strength normally 1 point, Angel Ring doubles it 2. Now that's good feel. That's a good feeling.
I completely forgot about that since it's been so long, but that's amazing, yeah.
Okay, so that's... I still would put them in good, because, again, I want to be a little bit picky, since I know there's going to be a ton of people in good already, so I want to make some distinctions. But if I had to promote something good, it might end up being these two. But this would be a good example of medium. So we get to FE4 Gen 1 for now. I think we can move the Lex up a little bit, so we have Gen 1 in one place real quick. So Azelle next, they join as buddies. I guess we'll go over Azelle first. Azelle is that early joining mages, and I think he's the kind of category where he's doesn't feel that good to use to me early on. It kind of depends. Like when you first get Azelle, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna use Azelle this playthrough because I mean, look at him. He one-rounds his brigands exactly with fire, and I mean, who cares that he gets weighed down a ton because he still doubles because the X-Men are so slow. And then, so you can very satisfyingly get kills on him early on, like 2 or 3 bandits if you play cleverly with Lex and the way you move him around and stuff. Maybe heal him at church or something, or get him over to another fight, despite his 5 move. You kind of have to struggle for it, but it can kind of work. And then you get to chapter 1, you play the arena, almost all your characters can beat it, or at least get to that stupid wind mage, Emil with the speed ring. Azelle just cannot get past like a Myrmidon or something. He just gets destroyed. It's like, okay, whatever, we'll play chapter 1, we'll just grind him up there, and he falls behind like the 5,000 horses you have starting out in that area. And then it just gets worse and worse, right? It gets worse, and he falls so far behind everyone else unless you like really spoon feed him, arena abuse. Like Azelle is, I think, part of what makes genealogy unfun for a lot of people is his inability to catch up and his inability to get through the arena, and he really creates this big inequality. And like if you made like a curve of his unit feel, it'd be like really high for prologue, and it goes way down and down until he promotes. Then when he promotes, he gets a horse. It gets better. He can use the light brand to have like weapon triangle for every other mage type. He has really good magic and really good speed, so he doubles and destroys everything. Still a little fragile, but you can make it work. You know, horses are that good. Tons of armor knights into chapter 4 and chapter 5 that you can destroy. That's kind of good again. But in the context of FE4, for me, Azelle is just not fun to use because it takes so much work to get him going. I genuinely think he's more frustrating to use than even some of the other units that are usually considered bad at combat, like Do and Arden. They have other things that make him charming and fun to me, but Azelle will always feel not fun to me. That's my experience. How about yours?
Yeah, I mean, I like slinging fireballs, but the problem with Azelle for me is basically the same thing. It's like, early on, it's like, okay, I'm going to use him. He's good in prologue. And then it's hard to get him to do anything else for like a while. Because one thing that FE4 does surprisingly well, which might actually hurt it for some people, is that it really pushes you to go fast with how money works and all the villages that are constantly under assault. So like, even though like casually, like I'm not going LTC speed, I always feel like, okay, I've still got to push. Yeah. And Azelle falls behind almost immediately. In my most recent run of Gen 1, the biggest use Azelle was getting, was basically having volleyball played with him as he got warped and returned from 2 castles just to grind Lachesis up. That's what he was there for. And like, he is fun once he promotes. But also in genealogy, that's kind of everyone. And there's so much suffering to get him there that, you know, because at least someone like Ira, who has like the same problems, she's at least got the overkill combat during that and can wipe the arena, and there's like the spectacle to it, whereas Azelle like gets kind of just wiped everywhere. Yeah,
it's strange because we've had units that have this kind of zero to hero thing going on in like good or medium at least. I don't remember Nino was there, but I think we had Lena in like medium or good at first. So there's like definitely room here for units to improve. Like sometimes it feels good to have that, and Azelle almost matches that to a T, where he starts bad and becomes good after promotion, but somehow it doesn't feel as rewarding. And I think you caught on why pretty well. I would personally put him in bad. I would too. I remember I was talking to P. Vladios about ranked runs in FE4, and he thinks Azelle is like the worst unit to grind in all of ranked, and that includes all the units I named before, like Do and Arden. He thinks Azelle is the worst one to train in Gen 1, which really says a lot. Okay, I just realized I'm not thanking my Patreons individually for their submissions because I keep looking at the spreadsheet, or rather not looking at the spreadsheet. I'll just edit in the names. We'll be fine. So there's Azelle. We have Lex next up, and I think Lex is almost universally for almost everyone. I mean, I'm not gonna say it. I'm gonna let you go first on Lex because I know you don't have a lot to say on the Gen 2 units. So this is your time to shine. Talk about Lex.
Yeah, all right. My whole life has led up to this moment.
Yes.
Lex, okay, Paragon, always fun. Tons of level ups, just getting the stats all the time. It really gives the effect of like a snowball, even though Lex doesn't snowball to, I think, the same extent that someone like Sigurd will, or some of the other ridiculous characters in FE4. It feels like he's really getting somewhere fast. Axes are not that fun to use, I find, in FE4 just because they're so heavy. But obviously, if you get the Brave Axe, I think that changes the game entirely. And then he feels like super unique because not many other people can use axes throughout the majority of Gen 1. I think it's only once you get some promotions that
Arden and Lacus have to promote. That's basically it for Gen 4,
Yeah.
Gen 1, I think.
Yeah. So he, even though axes aren't the most fun weapon type, they feel unique on him. Like he's bringing something to the table that nobody else can, and it's a Brave Axe. I still think the way you get the Brave Axe is ridiculously stupid. Last time I got it, I did not know that it had to be the Iron Axe because I bought the Steel Axe early, sold the Iron Axe, then had to run all the way back.
Oh,
to the
yes.
shop.
I was going to bring up an experience like that too. That's so funny.
Yeah, because I remember that. Because I was like rage searching on the internet, like what the difference between steel and iron was. Turns out iron is in steel, so I'm still triggered to this day. Like, that lake lady should have accepted it, but yeah, Lex.
It's not like she even has the demand for iron, right? It's like he drops his axe into the lake, and then he's honest about getting it back. That's what it's all about. It shouldn't matter if it's iron or steel.
Yeah, it shouldn't. I mean, like, I guess weapon weight's the same for all the weapons in it, so, like, the likelihood of him dropping it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't... Why he has butterfingers with the Iron Axe, I guess he's like me, he was trying to get rid of it. But...
He caught on.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, Lex. I'd say he's
you?
pretty... I like Lex.
Okay, that's good. I don't have too much to add here. I like that he's super bulky, which is not a super common unit trait in FE4, and he's just like pretty durable. He doesn't start out that way, but he becomes that way. I like that the Hero Axe basically cheats the system because you said the weapon weight for every weapon is the same, but the Brave Axe ignores the rules. Every axe weighs like 18, and then the Hero Axe weighs 12. It's like, okay, so it's a lance. Okay, all right, I'm down. I'm fine with it. I'll roll with it. And then Paragon feels super, super good. Like, just getting like 30 XP for chipping someone or killing someone for a full level is absolutely amazing. I love using Lex. I think a lot of people think of him as like FE4's version of Hector or Ephraim even, down to the blue hair and everything. And that's why I think he's a universal good unit feel. He does not snowball as hard, I think, because he does kind of fall off at some point later in Gen 1 where he's not as dominant as he is in Chapter 2, Chapter 3. But he does have, like, he's pretty likely to promote by Chapter 3, for example, which is always good feeling. I mean, he's just stomping on everyone with a promoted unit where everyone else is, like, they're trying to get to level 20, but they're not quite there yet. Maybe Finn is, if he's lucky. That's about it. That's all you got. So that's a huge standout. So
Yeah.
we're getting to Gen 2, which is where I know Bopper's experience, just like Lex, kind of falls off because, substitute runs OP. And unfortunately, no one submitted a substitute this time. But,
no Tristan this time.
Yeah, no Tristan. Was Tristan in there last time?
I don't think so. Tristan's just one of the Gen 2 characters I remember using.
I just remember as a name.
Yeah.
We'll go with it. I will say I like all these guys to an extent. Arthur is the son of Lewin, or rather, he's the son of Tiltu, but for me, he's always the son of Lewin as well, because he's passed down Forsetti. To this day, I think Bopper still doesn't know how getting Forsetti is done, right?
I don't, because the only time I read the story of FE4, Lewin died.
There we go.
So when people tell me it's in the story, it's like, I wouldn't know.
So we're not telling him. But you can get Forsetti on Arthur, and it feels really fucking good. And I'm pretty sure it's not a submission for him. It was a submission for Coirpre, actually, not for Arthur. I think aesthetically, Arthur also has one of the best portraits and best hairdos in the game. The best hair color. I want to say the hair style isn't kind of... I mean, it's kind of cool too. But the color is just... The Frege color schemes are great for everyone. Like Arthur, Tinny, even Linde to an extent. Ishtar. Reinhardt, of course. I just love that mix of like yellow and purple they got going on, and then it goes perfectly with a nice wiping of Horsetti all over the place. He starts as a mage, but it's that funny feeling when you have like a very tiny unit, but it feels like a tiny unit, and it can just like submit a giant ass, what do we call it, like a tornado basically, that just swallows everything whole. And the fact that he joins with that, I like to compare it to the first time I was breeding Pokemon in Pokemon Gold and Silver. I had my little cartridge and I was figuring out how to breed them. And I just put like my Typhlosion with Fire Blast in the daycare, along with something else like a Ditto or something. And then out came a Cyndaquil that was like level 5, but it had Fire Blast. And that was so amazing to me and so funny that you just like one-shot everything at equal level. That's what FE4 Arthur feels like to me. You get like a level 2 character with a 30 might weapon. It's like having a baby with a nuke in their hands. It's so funny to me. That's why I'm going to put Arthur in good. Yeah, I'm going to assume you have nothing with Arthur. I guess you used Amid instead, and he feels bad.
Yeah, well, in my first playthrough of FE4, I did get Arthur.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And he was fine. I didn't have FE4, obviously, but I like the hair. Trude should take notes. And I never thought about Gen 2 like characters being like EV trained, breeded Pokemon.
I didn't EV train. Okay, I was just trying out how the daycare works. That's all I knew.
So yeah, I guess hatch a Gen 2 unit and they're pretty good. So
yeah.
I got nothing to say on the next two though.
Okay, I'll just go through them. So Coirpre is the son of Sylvia, and that means he's a priest, and he doesn't. I'm kind of torn on him. So my last Iron Man at FE4, I had Coirpre, aka I passed on FE4 to Coirpre. Which is funny in its own way that he joins with a legendary weapon that he cannot use. So unless you promote him, he's going to be stuck with a weapon that he just can't use in his inventory. You can dump it in the convoy, I guess, but it's just amusing to me that you can pass on a legendary weapon, but he has no idea what to do with it. Like, he's like, I don't know how to read books. And then you promote him and suddenly he finds out, like, oh, this is how it's done. All right, my holy blood compels me to wipe everything out with FE4, I guess. The thing about Coirpre is that I think he embodies a couple things like Azelle that don't feel good in genealogy, which is grinding someone up when they're not good right away. I prefer to train units in combat over grinding them with staves, and grinding with staves is what you have to do with Coirpre. He just sits in the base, or he sits in the back of your army and just constantly spams Physic or Fortify just to get to a higher level, just so he can promote and actually do something, because you don't need the staff uses that Coirpre provides most of the time. You have other units that can do it, like you got Nana, you got Leaf, and you got like all Zed, I guess, or Hawk. So those can all like fulfill their staff needs, and Coirpre feels totally extra. And superfluous characters don't feel good. Like when you have 5 characters to do a thing and you get another 6th, it's like that feels dumb. Like, I'm already attached to the first 5, like the first 3 maybe even. Why do I need number 6 in here? So for me that feels kind of bad. Coirpre though, like the person who submitted this, what's their name? T-Class 45. He said specifically Coirpre, and for that I'm willing to put him in medium because Coirpre is super funny. For most of the same reason that Arthur feels funny. Just the fact that he comes out with a giant tornado that kills everything is pretty funny, and it's at least adds some sort of reward for your staff grinding, but staff grinding isn't too much fun. So there's Coirpre. Feel free to interject if there's anything you got to say, but I'm just going to assume you have nothing to say on the Gen 2
I have
build.
nothing to say.
Okay, that's fair. Then we have Lester. It's a bit of a modern mind, of course, because Lester is like his favorite unit ever. I like using Lester. He has the hit and run thing going on. You can think of Lester as like Midir 2.0, especially if you have Midir as Lester's dad. Just having a Bow Knight that can attack without getting countered feels almost unfair. It's not as broken in Gen 2 as it is in Gen 1, because Gen 2 you can generally enemy phase through everything because your characters are so strong, especially Seliph. So it doesn't add as much, but it still feels kind of nice to be able to use a bow without getting instant punished for, having a bow equipped by all these one-range enemies. And he has a cool hairstyle going on. I'm not super big on hair usually. Arthur is kind of more the exception than the rule for me. But aesthetically, I kind of like Lester just fine. I will say one thing. A lot of people like Dimna, the substitute, because he gets a strength +5 convo. I kind of don't care about him, because even with that convo, I think he's still worse than Lester. So for me, Dimna still doesn't feel that good to use. So I much prefer Lester, even though Dimma has something dumb going on. So I'm gonna put Lester in. I don't know if he feels like good or not. I guess he's good enough to fit in good. I could see him in medium too, because I don't care too much about using Lester usually. I usually use him when I like put the effort into pairing ID, and I usually use him. But it doesn't stand out to me. So if I had like 2 different good tiers, I'd probably put him in the bottom one. But since I only have 3 tiers for today, I decided I'm just gonna stick him in good, because he does feel good. And I know Modern Mind is gonna like hate on me if I don't. That's definitely not part of it or anything. Okay, Thracia time. Thracia, and that's a good game for unit feel, right? Thracia.
Yeah, sometimes. Not for Trude. I hate Trude. But
all right, out with it.
Okay, so my very first experience with Trude was in, I think it's 12X, right?
Yes.
That's the chapter where you get him.
Yes. Dandelion.
I captured him with Azelle. I did not know the chapter 12 skip at the time, or 12X skip at the time, to like just cheese the chapter entirely. So I had to capture him and carry him around. So in that experience of 12X, I'm like frontlining with Laura to try to get her towards the boss.
Wow,
I got everybody else tailing behind.
Frontline with your dancer, and then you capture him with Azelle unit from FE4. I'm so confused right now.
Not Azelle, Azelle.
Okay,
Azelle had him captured. I was too busy thinking of other fireballers, but Azelle's got him captured.
Dude, that's a heavy ass Azelle.
Yeah, he gets killed because of that, because he ends up getting like doubled or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but carrying Trude around killed my Azelle the first time, and then I didn't even get Trude. Then he just dipped. So like, like I'm not a fan of this guy. Like I don't like his stupid hair. I don't like his stupid face. I don't like his anything.
Wait, he dipped?
Bad.
He just vanished?
Like, well, I had nobody else that could like.
Oh shit! So he was back on the field with no weapons.
Yeah, so he was back on the field with no weapons, and then just stood there, and nobody else could capture him.
Did he block the corridor too, or did he just run away?
I think he ran away.
They do like to do that. That's funny as shit. And you never used him again?
No.
Understandable.
Never used him a single time. Maybe my most opinionated take, I guess, on a character I've never actually used. But you talk about bad first impressions.
It's funny because I don't think I ever trained Trude other than the one time I trained literally everyone in the arena. I did have one dumbass experience with Trude in one of my first like Iron Mans of FE5, where I remember to bring a sleep staff to put him to sleep, so you can just kind of grab him as you go along the chapter. I did the skip thing with Laura, but unfortunately I forgot to bring anyone who had the build to capture him, so he just stood in my way sleeping, and I couldn't get past him because he's still an enemy, and you can't talk to him either to recruit him because Parn is on the other side. I guess, no, Parn can't talk to him because he was asleep. I couldn't do that either, so he's like, fucked. I was completely fucked, so I had to like capture release him, I think. No, I couldn't do that. I had to kill him. I had to actually kill one of my own units in an Iron Man. Even though I had him like completely unlocked and everything, he's asleep. But I just didn't remember to bring Dagdar or someone to capture him with. Because I was like, there's no combat here. I can just let Dagdar take a chill. Or like no Orson need. I just, fuck dude, that was so bad. And then Trude doesn't really, like, the other thing that I think hurts Trude in theory if you were to try to use him is his whole niche is like he has Nihil to negate enemy skills. But then they also put that skill on Marida's sword. And so if you ever desperately need Nihil, you got it in a sword fighter that's much more fun to use. So Trude just feels completely outclassed when Nihil isn't even that like useful to begin with. So I think with our combined bad experiences, we might have to put Trude in bad too. I think we're on a record here. I've never seen a 3-3-3 for unit feel. I think last time we had like this tier was already at 3 lines before we had 3 units in bad unit feel. But here we are. That feels bad, man.
Yeah, okay. We're in the trash heap now.
What about Macha? How's she for you? I know it's technically not your turn, but
yeah, I like Macha. I like the Manster characters that show up because like unlike those other bums that leave your party and then don't try to save you, like Macha and Brighton, like they put up, like they come out and so they're there at your lowest point. And then Macha, I actually had a ton of fun just raising throughout the game. I don't know if it's anything necessarily unique to her, because Vantage is not like that crazy fun of a skill on someone that doesn't have like a insta-kill, like, Orson type weapon.
Yeah.
But, they're at a low point and then just kind of worked and she stuck around. So I don't know if it's necessarily the best unit feel ever, but I had fun with Macha.
All right. That's fair. Macha for me is, I think, the epitome of a medium character. because she does not feel bad to use, and I do really love her the bit where she comes in, and I like her little interaction with Brighton and everything, and with Laura as well, where they teach you about how like, stealing, you need to be like fast enough and strong enough or whatever to do it. For me, Macha, like you said, Vantage is not that crazy. It's so unremarkable for me on her that I always forget it's there. And then I have animations on and she gets attacked, and then the units attack in a different order than I expect, and it always throws me off. It's like, wait, what's happening? Oh, she has Vantage, that's right. It's like, because Vantage always activates, even at full HP, so it always is there, but I always forget about it somehow. I'll probably never forget it again now that I've talked about it and I've, released my inner feelings on it. But that's how I feel about Macha and Vantage. And then in general, I find her a bit unrewarding because she doesn't really become super good. She gets access after promotion, but that's not really something that's in high demand in a game with 5% weapon triangle. And like I guess hand axes are alright, but the swords are honestly better than FE4 and FE5. I don't think I've ever used Macha full time. I always feel fine benching her at some point rather than using her. So my experience is almost purely the one time I raised everyone in the arena, and then every other time I just used her in Mancer and ditched her. There's some like cool things you can do with her. I definitely appreciate having her, but if I had to think of units that make me feel good, Macha would not be one of them. So I'm gonna drag her over to the good old medium. Okay, for Brighton, for me it's honestly almost the same with Brighton, plus some additional frustrations. I love Wrath on everything. It's super great to take advantage of, and like having him take on someone on enemy phase and they just get a massive crit on them. But for Brighton, it's a bit like, again, a double-edged sword, because the guy doesn't have perfect accuracy, so the frustration levels run high when this guy misses his first hit, because it's like that just means he does nothing generally, because he either doesn't double or he just does like 4 damage in the second hit, or he just misses again because Brighton moments, and that sucks. I hate that shit. But Wrath feels good, so it's kind of like it kind of goes up and down this tier list all the time for me in Manster, because I love some of the things he can do. I love that he can carry almost anyone, like assist in like capture, take, dropping, or just killing like a bunch of soldiers, because his bulk is kind of good. But at the same time, I'm never super happy with him. And there's something else going on here where you go outside and all your units start mounting. It's like, oh, Nana has a mounted healer now, and Karen is like a flying Pegasus that can carry everyone around and do stupid sneak stealth ability stuff, get all the houses, and then you got Brighton, and he gets a horse, and it should feel good too. He gets that, you can finally use that steel axe he brought with him all through Manster, so he's running around. But I always feel like he feels so disappointing to use somehow outdoors. I don't know what it is, but he never really felt good to use at that point. It's like I thought he'd be better, but he feels like it should be much better, but instead he just keeps being mediocre for me. So I don't have great experiences using Brighton throughout this whole game. Is this different for you?
Not really. To me, Brighton is kind of like a furnace. Like, I'm glad it works, but the less I have to think about it, the better. For me, I think the fact that he's an axe cav hurts him, because indoors he's not like Fergus, where he's gonna quickly get to use like all the good swords, because I know people on Manster, it's going to be different for everyone, but like, a lot of people like to bring the flame sword or whatever, or then you get the brave sword. He doesn't get to use any of that, so he's just kind of stuck using like kind of your dinky like slim swords and iron swords, if I remember his weapon rank correctly. I think, does he just have E swords?
I think so. Actually, he can use the steel sword. He can use D as well.
Yeah, but steel is still not as exciting as like a flame sword or a brave sword.
No, I mean, Lady of Light wouldn't even have it.
Yeah. And so then once he gets outdoors and then mounts, and then he's got axes, and it's like, okay, well now like Dawson's using the axes because he probably took them off of Brighton, so now you got to reconfigure your inventories, and it's like, and then it's just not that crazy good. It's this weird thing where he's fine indoors and then he's fine outdoors, and it just never goes anywhere.
Yeah. I think we discussed that a long time ago, where one of the most dissatisfying curves a unit can have is a straight line, where if it goes like from down to up, or even if it starts really good and then goes down, that's somewhat exciting at least, because something's changing. But when it's a flat line around the medium level especially, that feels bad, right? Yeah. I kind of want to put him in medium still, because he doesn't actually feel bad, just like okay, even though medium is usually feels bad, Like medium performance usually feels bad, but I kind of don't want to put him in bad because we have some like real anger issues with these guys. Whereas Brighton is just kind of like a feeling of mild disappointment. We're kind of whelmed with Brighton.
I think the other thing too that hurts me is that you see Wrath, and then you already have experience with Wrath in the game from Orson, and it's like, and then he does nothing with it except miss.
I hate how much all this reminds me of Ford, but I cannot put this guy in the same level as Ford, because Ford is like, when you said you got experience with Wrath, I'm like, oh, so you get Ford, or you get a Cav, you're like, oh, Cavs are usually good. I mean, that's what we used to think, at least, right? And then you get him, and it's like, oh, actually, it's not that good. Okay. Yeah. We have a Ronan remaining, and I could swear when I saw Ronan's name, I was like, wasn't he on there already? But, go figure, he was not on there already. Ronan is, I think, the best example for me of a unit that I have a personal experience with that feels really good, that other people, they might have it every once in a while, but I feel like my experience with him is so unique. I was playing my first FE5 Iron Man. I know a lot of people know this already, but I have to tell this story. This is the only place where it goes. I used to my first Iron Man. He got 2 move level ups in like his first 2 or 3 level ups ever. So I had like a 9 move Ronan running around, killing a bunch of shit. I love that Ronan, every turn with Ronan is a casino where you put your effort in, and what you get out is somewhere between 0 and 100,000 damage. Like either he will just run up to an enemy, miss them once, and you sit there like, what are you doing? Or he runs up to an enemy, crits him. That probably still does like 9 damage because Ronan has no strength whatsoever. He procs the depth and then kills him anyway, even though he shouldn't have. And then he's done with his turn. He's like, okay, by the way, movement star, I get to move again because there's like a 15% chance to do it every turn. And he moves again, he kills another enemy, gets a level up, gets a movement level up, and now it's like best feeling in the world. And it's not supposed to happen, but if you use Ronan often enough, especially if you do it multiple playthroughs, it's going to happen once in a lifetime maybe. But it's going to happen for you if you just keep using Ronan, and it's the best feeling ever. So for me personally, I think Ronan joins the other blue-haired fellows in good. Have you ever had the Ronan experience?
I've never had that Ronan experience, because I've never really used him beyond his first couple chapters, the chapter 2, 2X, 3.
Wow, have you even played Thracia?
I have. The reason why, and this is something that maybe aids to his unit feel a little bit, is that every time when I played Thracia, I played it on stream, and everyone was just begging me, use Ronan, use Ronan, use Ronan. And so I almost got anti-peer pressured out of it. So I was like,
Mekkah
no, I'm going to use Macha.
Well.
So, like the love is there for Ronan, and I definitely hear how fun he can be, and I'm sure he would feel great if I used him. I want to try a sniper at some point in Thracia.
I would recommend it. It's definitely, it's not like a unit that just becomes good with enough training. It's more like just use him more often, and eventually the odds will come back. If the law of averages, at some point he'll get one of those insane turns where it's like, wow, this is insanely funny. A lot of people, I think, they harp on the high magic too much. I had this argument with one of my patrons, Modi, where he's like, the problem with Ronan is that he has high magic, but there's no magic bow. It's like, okay, but that's resistance in this game. That's helpful for him. And it wouldn't be better if he had bad magic. It's not like, this is not a game where you get to redistribute stats, right? It's not a character building game where you have total stat points. It's just, he has high magic. It's funny. That's part of the funny. That's what makes him amusing to me. Okay. I know a natural stopping point would be between games. We've been going for 40 minutes. I think we can go a little bit longer, maybe split FE6 in half, because there's a lot of FE6 characters. So how about we do a little bit of FE6, call quits halfway through, before or after Milady, and then we'll have this first episode. All right. So we have Sue, and Sue is, again, a character I'm not completely sure on how to put her. I absolutely love Sue. Her artwork and her portraits are amazing, and especially for the time that they were brought out. I'm not going to say that people didn't know how to draw back then, but my association with FE6, the first thing I think when I see FE6 is not the character portraits look super polished and finished, but somehow Sue's looks always amaze me. I just love the aesthetic part of that. As a unit, I don't really care about her as a character, and I don't think I've ever read any support by her in full. But as a unit, I said before, bows on horses always feels almost like cheating, because you have so much range to work with, and it's nice to just be able to end your turn, completely outside of range of anything, and the next turn you just like go in there and attack. That doesn't usually end well for Sue if you do it in FE6 because the high enemy density means you probably get killed. But you could do it if you wanted to, and that feels cool. And then not getting counterattacks is just nice. Being kind of fragile is kind of okay if you're just not taking counterattacks. You can kind of deal with it. FE6 is a nice game to use bows in. If you're going to be bow locked, it might as well be in a game where enemies hit really hard on the counterattack. And then she's fast. She can use the killer bow more quickly than almost any character because she has D-bows at base and joins early enough to where you can build up to C by the time Shin joins. So she has some niches going on there. And I think if you play normal mode, you can argue she's actually better than Shin. Argue it. Not concrete, but you could argue it. That feels good. The bad part for me is that unless you're using a Pegasus Knight, if you use Sue, you know that you're going to pay for it down the line when you go Sakai route, which is the bad chapter field route, where almost every attack you use is going to miss, and almost every attack the enemy does is going to hit. It's not going to hurt too much. It's going to like tickle you. They're going to double you. A stupid short bow nomad's probably going to crit you. You have to deal through with Monkey and his stupid infinite reinforcements from the tents. You have to deal with Sleep Staff Druids in 20x. You have to deal with a gimmick where Roy sees the chapter, and it either means he sees the chapter, or you get to face like 5 ambush reinforcements for no reason. That's not fun to have attached to you. And it feels unfair to pin all of Sakai's problems on Sue. But the fact is, if you don't recruit Sue, you can never go to Sakai. It's impossible. So it feels like it's kind of her fault. But I don't want to blame her because I like Sue. But Sakai feels really bad. That's where I'm at. I'm conflicted.
Sue is kind of in that way what people used to think Jagans were. If you use Sue, the game will punish you for it. And that does not feel good at all. Like, because the Sakai thing is always like tickling in the back of my head whenever I've attempted to use Sue.
I'm sorry to interject, but it's like whenever Sue's XP bar goes up, it's like, all right, you're 10 XP closer to Sakai. Are you sure you want to continue?
I'm like, can we de-level, please? Although, I don't know, de-leveling wouldn't do a whole lot of good for her, but not like leveling up does either. I've never had that great of a time trying to use Sue. I feel like she has the same problem a lot of early game bow users in FE6 have, which is that, okay, bows are good in principle, and they sure are nice to have, and oh boy, I'm dealing 4 damage. And so it just, I don't know, it never feels like that great. It always feels like this is good utility, but I don't know. I do agree that I love the artwork. It definitely stands out as some of the best in Binding Blade, since, you know, I imagine Game Boy, new tech, difficult to do the portraits on in the new engine, so it looks really nice. I don't know about her story or anything, but Sue to me was always one of those characters that like not really doing a ton more for me than someone like, I don't know, Dorothy, who we'll talk about in a bit, and also I'm scared of using her because of Sakai.
That's fair. I'm gonna weigh the goods and the bads and put her in medium. I think that's where she'll go. A lot more medium and bad this time. I know I keep saying it, but that's how it feels. There was one more thing I wanted to say. FE7 has a similar thing going on with the Hero Quest units, where it's like, if I use Dorcas and Barcha, sure, it'll be funny to use big funny Axeman that always misses, but you go to Jeremy map for it, and that feels bad. But at least in FE7, you can counteract it by using magic users a lot more easily because there's a lot more different these characters. And also, FE7 has that great feeling thing where you can kill off the characters you're using to go to the other route. So you can have fun with Dorcas and then kill them off in chapter 26. And then when you go to chapter 27, you'll still be able to go to the Kenneth chapter. But in FE6, it doesn't work. If you kill off Sue after you got a bunch of experience, the game still counts it.
Really? I did not know that.
It's very mean. It's very mean. I think we found out through like, I don't know if it's draft racing or something else, speedrunning or something, but we found out the hard way. That you still go to Sakai with a Detsu, so that's even worse. Because now you're going to a place with no nomads to counter nomads with.
Yeah, and at least Jeremy and the Kenneth chapters is like one chapter with FE7 enemies. Yeah. Like that's at least like I could tolerate that.
Yeah, Sakai is. I mean, I think one chapter in Sakai is tolerable, but the 4 that remain are not tolerable, not even remotely. Yeah. Is it 4? It might be 3, but they feel so bad it might as well be 5.
Yeah.
Okay, how about you start on Dorothy?
Okay, so Dorothy, I enjoy Dorothy more than most of the other early game bow users in Binding Blade, because functionally, I always find that she's doing the same thing. as like Walt or Sue, which is she's dealing 12 damage to the wyverns in chapter 7.
Mm-hmm. With an effective weapon.
But yeah, but I really like the design of Dorothy, because she does stand out in like a sea of characters that are just really designed to be like visually appealing anime sexy emblem characters, and this just kind of homely down to earth character design I find really appealing. It stands out in like a unique way that makes Dorothy, I think, in some ways more relatable, just from like that visual aspect, which makes like the sort of when somebody looks like when someone's got the flashy anime hair like Walt and they do 4 damage, it's like, this is embarrassing.
You don't belong in this genre, bro.
Yeah, like he looks like he's gone Super Saiyan, and then he's doing like he's missing 2 88s, and you're like, what?
What a useless transformation! You changed your hair, so what?
That's basically Walt. But then Dorothy, like, you know, if you do train her up, it feels a lot more like typical Zero to Hero, because you're taking this farm girl, you know, homely character, building her up. I've never tried it though, because it still feels like shit to deal 4 damage, but it's better than I think what everyone else has got going on at the time she joins.
That's fair. I have not used Dorothy full time ever. I have a couple of weird feelings with Dorothy that I'll just kind of go through real quick. So first one is chapter 6 is the breather chapter of FE6. Like early game FE6 feels really menacing. I wouldn't say chapter 5 is super difficult. It is very tedious though. I saw your tweet on it. It's like, yeah, I definitely agree. That chapter takes forever and is not very rewarding at all. But it's the last one where the enemies get an extra like 5 levels of heart mode bonuses. In chapter 6 they kind of chill a little bit and go down in strength. And also the enemies you face are much less threatening. You get like soldiers for the most part. They are very easy to beat. You get choke points everywhere that you can take advantage of. It's a nice breather chapter. I generally want to take advantage of that by training my units in preparation for chapter 7 and like just kind of have an easier moment. So by using like I'm using like a medium to strong team at that point to beat easier enemies, it does not feel very good to then downgrade part of my army for the sake of Dorothy just because she can get kills that way. It does not feel great to use a bad unit in a chapter where I'm supposed to having an easier time. It feels like, you know, I want to take advantage of the fact that the map is easier now. That feels not great. And also Archer, I mean, it's a good game to be an Archer in like before. I like having effective damage against wyverns. I know you said it was 12 earlier, but that's still 8 more than most units can do to a wyvern rider.
It is.
And I honestly tried my best in my last FE6 playthrough, in the Lin one, to take advantage of Dorothy while she was still relatively free deployment. I think she's the only character so far that has died 2 times. So she's on the bench now. I know Modi submitted her so that I couldn't, and Modi just upgraded to like S tier for me, so I can't shit talk her too much. But I will say I also like Dorothy's design a lot more than I used to. I used to be kind of like not very impressed with that kind of person. It's like, okay, whatever, I'll take the anime flashy hair, even though they do 4 damage. But I saw her full art of Dorothy. I actually like her a lot more now. I do like the down-to-earthness as well. And one day I will probably use Dorothy full time. I think part of what makes Dorothy feel not very good to train to me is that she doesn't turn out all that much better than Klein and Agren, and those come for free without any sweat and tears. So it kind of takes away from how good you feel about training her when it turns out you just put like 1900 XP into something you were already gonna get anyway, plus an Orion's Bolt. That don't feel great. Like this, I know it's about more than that. I know it's not about like getting the most bang for your buck, but it doesn't help when someone shows up and it's like, hey, I'm you but better.
Yeah. And raising archers is also just really annoying. It's like leveling healers, I find, where you're just getting like usually the chip. It's because in FE6 especially, you don't really want to be setting up kills for archers very often.
I had this exact discussion with Don too. You're like,
which is annoying. And then being in competition with anyone for a promotion item in FE6 is just because I always find that's the game where promotion items are the tightest. I'm not sure if it is. But
it's one of the ones.
That. Yeah,
it's definitely up there. I had this exact discussion with Don earlier about archers. I don't think it's fair to penalize them for being hard to set up kills for optimally, because you're basically saying you're not taking counterattacks and that's a bad thing for you. That hurts you. That's like, dude, the only reason you're able to not take counterattacks from this enemy at all is because I set it up for you. So you should be crediting Dorothy for setting up a kill for Lance. But yet here we are complaining about how hard she is to raise up. It's not fair, but the world isn't fair.
Yeah, world's not fair. But I mean, like, I think that's one of those things where it's like, if you're talking like efficiency, that's where it's like nice to have.
Yes.
But if you're trying to like raise her up specifically, like level 20, get the most out of her, get the best Dorothy you can, that's where it becomes like kind of a slog.
It's great utility, but it unfortunately means that they're better as temps than as actual full-time units for sure. I don't hate Dorothy enough to put her in bad. I'm gonna put her in medium as well. It does not feel good to me though. No. Okay, how about we wrap it up with Boars? I want to read out Danny Doyle's submission of Boars. I don't have it handy here, but she submitted both Boars and Milady, and she said, "I'm gonna submit 2 equally competent Lance users, Boars and Milady." I like that. That's daring. I'm gonna put it that way. I think it's my turn to go first. So, Boris, I replaced him with Lynn in my last playthrough of FE6. Someone had to go. I didn't know how to insert a new unit completely, and I was like, you know what, this is probably the most fair way to do it. And you know, they're both wind affinity units. And they both have a speed growth, or so I've heard anyway. So
this is true.
They technically have a speed growth. I missed Boris a couple of times. There's like that one point in chapter 2 where you can rescue drop Marcus onto a fort to relieve yourself a lot of pressure from the early axe fighters, like a bunch of hand axe guys. I didn't have available, so I had to like do a little bit of extra work to get him on there. I still managed, but it made me realize that Boris has his uses, as dwindling as they might be. I find that Boris is hilarious in chapter 5 because enemies are all around and a lot of them one-round him, like they double him and they kill him. He's like a tank with like 20 base HP. It's very exciting to use in that chapter. Forests, great news for Boris. I love it when my hit rates go against 2RN at that point, where he's like, okay, I actually can't hit anything unless I get lucky. That's fantastic. But I will also admit that there is, in a dark corner of the internet, a guide on GameFAQs that says FE6 character guide for hard mode, or rather it's like a guide on how to get through hard mode, and there's a character guide part in there, and it says generals are one of the best classes in the game, and I recommend using Boars very heavily. I mean, the author of that guide recommends using Boars very heavily. I don't know who the author is. It couldn't be me, but that's the thing that happened. Now, good things about Boars that I enjoy is promo bonuses for generals, FE6 in general, but for generals especially, are sick. Like they get like 3 speed or 4 speed or something, like HP, speed, defense, strength. They get everything ever on promotion. So if you can get in there, it feels pretty good. Yeah, I kind of ran out of good things to say about Boris, I'm afraid. He can triangle attack. Triangle attacks, massive points for unit field, massive points. Yes. This a guarantee that your stats won't hurt you. The only stat that matters when using triangle attack is strength. And Boris, he has some strength, not as much as Barth, but he has some strength to work with. So you can set it up to do funny things. There's 2 force deployed armor knights for him in chapter 8 that he can do it with. So there's 5,000 videos out there of him doing stupid shit with that. That's amusing. If you take 0 damage, you get the funny ping sound of FE6, which is the best it's ever been in the series. Every other game it's like an actual thing, but in FE6 it's a ping or twang or whatever you want to call it. That's funny. FE6 love to do this thing where they just have 5 mercenaries and one of them sneakily tries to use an armor slayer on you. If you get caught off guard by that, that feels bad. So a ton of good and a ton of bad. So I don't want to go with medium though. It feels like a cop-out. Maybe it's because I already have like a bunch of mediums, and if I turn it like 90 degrees, it will look like a middle finger to like someone giving an opinion. So still conflicted here, but that's the random anecdotes I have for you on Boris. That's my feeling on Boris.
So shout out to triangle attack super early. I think it's the earliest triangle attack in the series as far as, you know, I'm sure there's somebody out there that's killed Henning using triangle attack Boars, which I now really want to do. I think
the tiles next to Henning are inaccessible to armor knights.
I think. No.
I've had people say this before, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
No, that's ridiculous.
I know, right?
Okay,
he was prepared. He came prepared. He set up a throne specifically to prevent this.
He was the thing. What we didn't know is that all along Henning was most afraid of the armor knight triangle attack.
Can you blame him though? Devastating.
I really can't. He's like, this just negates the entire purpose of my throne. But anyway, the point, like Boars, I always find, okay, chapter 1, he gets that village. Okay, that's banger utility. And then beyond that, it's like so many axe bros early game where he's at weapon triangle disadvantage. He's not hitting anything. He gets, I think, he starts getting doubled by the axe bros as soon as chapter 3. Might even be chapter 2.
I think you're right.
Which just is like, okay, now he's getting, 2-shot or 3-shot.
It's got a drought feel. They really copied Arcanea just down to the T.
They really did. They should have copied FE1 and given him swords or something. At least he could hit things. But so it's like, okay, he's not chunky, which he's supposed to be. So like he's not as bulky as like Alan or Lance or other people that are around for just as long, which is frustrating because he's supposed to be like, big armor knight. Like, oh, I'm here to protect Lilina. No wonder she got captured. And I don't know. It always feels bad to me to try to use boars. It also doesn't help that his earliest support partners don't join until chapter 8.
I think so all of his support partners join in chapter 8. Literally all of them.
Yeah. So, if you're taking it slow and you're wanting to build up supports and build up your early game characters, do Alan and Lance or Wolt and Marcus or something to really fix a lot of the problems that characters have, which supports really do take care of. You just can't do that for him until you're approaching the mid game.
Yeah.
Which, I think also just generally feels really bad. I find him like he's really tough to use if you're trying to train him up and you don't have a lot of the crutches that other characters have.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also 4-move and an armor knight.
And then you get to the mid game and it's also all axe bros. Like the Western Isles is all mages and axe bros. Yeah. Some archers and mercenaries.
Mm-hmm.
You can make them
work.
Those
mercenaries.
I used them on my first hardcore playthrough ever. I think I used them on my first normal playthrough too, and it kind of it didn't feel that super duper awful. He's not the worst character you could ever use, but he doesn't have a lot going for him. Let me put it that way. But
of course you used him. General is the best class in the game.
Exactly. He gets big promo bonuses, and he's an armor knight with speed. He fixes his only weakness. All this sounds really bad, but triangle attack is super funny, so we'll go.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. You do solve the hit rate issue.
Solve every problem. All you need is strength. Just give him every energy drop, and you got this going. I would do this, but the only times I've used boars, I had fun. So I have to go with good here. That's the only way to go about it.
I'll try to use them next time I play FE6. I'll give the good college try to boars.
Yeah, we kind of have to round it off here, but really quick, isn't that a thing you have to say? I feel like that's something you say a lot when you're playing through FE6 or in general.
Yeah,
where you're going through FE6, like I don't want to use this character right now, but I got to try it sometime. I got to do it sometime.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess it's kind of inherent to big cast games. That's something I realized.
FE6. FE12, I find are games that are a lot like that. FE12 is more just because size of cast. FE6, it's because I know he's getting one-rounded now, but maybe later in the game we can break him out and he'll do great. So, I don't know. I've still never used Percival, though, in FE6, so maybe...
damn. Okay.
Because I've never recruited him, because Lalamer Elfin's always been dead.
Right. The case against resetting really hurting you there.
Yeah. The case against Percival, I'll rename it.
Basically is what it is.
Yeah.
All right, that's really good. We're going to round it off here. We can continue another time with the rest of FE6. We still got a bunch of wyverns, a bunch of dragons, actually, when you think about it, and a lot more other characters from other games as well. Thank you so much for joining, man. It's been super fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
All right, I'll see you all next time. Peace.
All right, see you.